Hello, we back. So yeah, today we're gonna be continuing answering questions. I have a fuck ton of questions ahead of me. I have so much work to do, and it's gonna be a good one. It's gonna be good. I cannot wait. So yeah, let's get at it, shall we? All right. What's good, Claude? Let's continue that questionnaire. I have a fuck ton of questions ahead of me. Yeah, he doesn't. Alrighty. Oh, fucking Christ, dude. No way. There's already a fly in here. Alright. Which file are we looking at, dude? Local setup thread. Ah! Okay. Yes, it does that. Basically, it just creates the yeah, it basically sets the init local key in the configuration file to true. But what we're trying to do essentially is, yes, you're right. It can be stale. So that's another thing I have to do, which is basically set it up so you can be within an already set up state, and then basically go through the initialization process. Well, the local setup process. That's the difference. So it's like initializations for the dock. Local setup is for the actual application. So that's the two different windows there. That is something I gotta do. It's been on my fucking head for like a minute. $247 tickets, dude. No. The host name gets a random 4-character suffix. Is this suffix persisted anywhere? Wait, what? The host name is... What? Why is the host name getting a new... Why would the host name get a different 4-character suffix? I don't quite understand that. Why would I want it to be different? I mean, at that point, it's the host name is the host name. I don't think it should get a difference. Let me see the host name in my configuration file. Where's my library? Huh? Application support. Hours. No, not that one. Where did I store it again? Ah, fuck. I always forget the path. Oh, this library. Wait a minute. Applications, no. System, library. This library. I hate that there's two libraries. It's so weird. What? Oh yeah, it's... was it this one? And I'm just fucking... Where the fuck did I put my library? Hold on, I gotta check my configuration path. It should be right in there. I haven't checked it in a while. Oh, wait, you know where I actually have it written down is here. Right there. Application then support. Fucking Christ, dude. That it's so weird that there's two libraries. All right, so let's see. Let's go to here. Let's go here. Let's go cat that. All right, there we go. Let me look at the host name for this. The host name isn't used for the setup. What? Hold on a second. Let me check. Before I answer that question, I want to see this real quick. Not that one. That one. We go down and we go to local setup thread. There's no host name. Yeah, that's receiving the credential. Yeah, no, that's receiving the credential. It doesn't have a randomly generated. Oh, the host name is the name of the fucking node. The host name is the name of the node. So I'm not quite understanding why. Oh, I think I remember. Hold on. I think I remember. So the reason for that is actually because in the case that somebody, let's say, it has the same name, right? So the host name is pulled from the username for the application. So what happens if there's two hosts, right, that are set up? There's two applications that are set up by the same user with the same username. You need to have some sort of unique identifier in that instance. Does that make sense? Shit, that's another thing I gotta add to the doc. Holy fuck, I just remembered. I just realized that. One quick thing before answering this next question. I need to add a to-do list item where I need to create a node deletion tool within the actual doc itself. That works through the proxy API. No! That wasn't the answer, dude. That was I said, read what I said. Read the words that I said. I said one quick thing before answering this next question. So that wasn't my answer. That ticket though is a random to-do list item. Aha. Okay. That's what I thought. Except locals. Why is local on? That might be antiquated because the current decision tree for that logic belongs to the SSH utilities. The file that has SSH variables, so it decides what is local true or not true. I think might be a secondary layer of that. Potentially, it might have been left over, but honestly, it doesn't hurt. No, everything needs to be centralized from a single point of truth, and that is that node right there. But the entrance, the opening of the application itself, which sets the SSH variables. That needs to be reworked so it is cleaner, and that also might be dead code. Dude, it means so much that freaking MJ followed my thing he's supporting. I'm so goddamn grateful to have a friend like him, dude. He was one of the really good people. I would describe this as bad because it already fucked up. Alright. After successful SSH login, the method also deploys the SSH key via the Avahi local username. What deploy via Avahi separately? Why deploy via Avahi separately when the login already succeeded via the Tailscale IP? Well, that is a faster connection. So, I mean, I'd rather the 1 gigabit local connection over the network, which definitely is a bigger bottleneck unless you have 1 gigabit internet. And then even then, the servers themselves could also have a bottleneck. So the purpose of that is remote work, in the sense of being able to not be at home. But what we need there is speed when you're at home. So that's the purpose of that. This step fetches the doc's hostname via SSH and saves it as local IP Avahi. What happens if the doc hasn't been renamed yet at this point? Does it get default? Nope. So there is never a point where, god damn it, dude, this is just getting worse and worse. So there is never a point where the Avahi's not set up. The setup process is forced, so you have a doc initialization step if you are initializing a doc. But if you're not initializing a doc, then you're just setting it up, like you're setting up an account. And in which case the local IP and all those other variables already exist. There is a separate local setup process that I'm working on That's going to be worked on when I do the user management tool. So that's another step in the future, but that's essentially where that's going. So yeah, but to answer your question, that's not the case. And also, yeah, I guess you can also add a ticket for the future user management tool and the things that I mentioned there. But that's my answer to the question, though. There's never a point where the doc is not set up or initialized. If it's not, it's forcing the application forces you to initialize the doc. You're either initializing the doc or you are setting up a user. In which case, if you're setting up the user local setup, then the doc's already initialized, the Avahi's already set up. Method uses 100 milliseconds pulling for target step. What is the rationales for this polling approach versus event-based handling? And could it create responsiveness issues? What is the purpose of run? What is the purpose of run? There's def run. Where is run called again? I don't see run being called again. And I also don't see the variable that they're talking about. But anything event based is definitely better because it's interactive to the actual event input, especially during a wizard. That makes more sense. Check running. So check running uses run. It's not there. Is running uses run. I don't see what they're talking about. Oh wait, here we go. There it is. Yeah, it should be event-based. I think that was just a default that we set up, like temporary scaffolding essentially for coordination. But I think that having a event-based signal handling is probably the better way to go about it, without a doubt. The stop method only sets is running to false without explicitly calling qthread quit. Does this rely on the main's loop check running guards to naturally exist? Does this rely on the main loops? You see the thread part here. This part's the fucking. All right, hold on a second. The stop method only sets is running to false without explicitly calling qthread quit. Does this rely on the main loops check running guards to naturally exit? I believe it should. Stop does not call that. It should, because then, I mean, I don't have very robust error handling yet. This has just been building the happy path. But yes, it should do that, because otherwise it would crash. It would run a run condition. It would basically be a run condition. And it should definitely quit the thread. Not just set is running to false. I think check running guards to naturally exit potentially does that. Let me double check. This has been a minute. qthread.quit. It doesn't do that. qthread.quit isn't even in there. I don't think I ever built a clean closing for this, because I always assumed that it was just going to go through and work. But I think this actually ties back to the concept within the initialization file, where we're talking about restructuring the step-by-step architecture so it can actually retain what step it's on. There's a ticket regarding that, but we should do something similar for this. This should be a separate ticket, but reference that previous ticket, please. I need music, dude. What the fuck? I feel so seen. Alright, why does execute step safely set target step instead of directly calling execute step? Yes. Yes, that's a reason. It's like a redundant safety. Once again, this is temporary scaffolding. It hasn't been optimized. So honestly, yeah, it should set the next step because there's no other windows running simultaneously. You can't run the application without actually going through this setup process. But to be honest, the only time you're actually referencing this setup process, the only thing that's actually accessing things within this thread is this thread itself. So it could be a thread that runs in parallel with the main application without having any problems, because although there are variables that need to be set in order for this. Okay, so this actually brings up another interesting point I just realized. We need to pause the thread for the actual application. There's another ticket in here that's talking about a stale state local setup. And also this could be just a reconfiguration of the local setup as well. But this actually needs to pause the main application because there are variables that are running for this application in order that this setup process sets up. That's the whole purpose of it. So that's another thing worth noting as well. But yeah, we need to that's another ticket here, is we need to optimize the step handling process for the thread coordination. That's 3 new tickets. 2 new tickets to file and then edit 1. Ha! I don't remember, to be honest. We need to clean that up. Without a doubt. Holy shit. That's something that we need to clean up as well. Let's set that as a ticket, please and thank you. It doesn't break anything currently. It's been working, which is great. But once again, we've only been building for the happy path. We haven't been building for robust error handling yet. Darkness! I'm trying to do it with change hands. I've been doing the rolls with this one. I'm trying to do it with this one now. They're not as coordinated. My left hand is not as coordinated. You can hear the difference between the right hand is like... This is my left hand attempt. It's hard! Alright. 10. The safe emit method catches generic exception during the signal emission. What types of exceptions would occur during signal emission? Does the silent catching mask any real errors? Honestly, I haven't come across any errors because once again, we've been building around the happy path. And so what we're trying to do is basically we need to do a whole session based around the robustness of error handling specifically for safe emit as well. I haven't come across any errors yet though, to be honest, because it's such a straightforward setup process, but we need to think of edge cases and all that sort of stuff regarding that. We have to have a whole probably like week worth of just building error handling systems and all that sort of stuff for this process in itself. When config manager is _local _initialized returns true and init _finish is emitted, what prevents the user from rerunning steps 2 to 5 after launch? Well, the fact that the actual local setup process is not actually, that the setup process window, this entire thread within itself, is locked behind the actual configuration key for the local setup. If it's true, which that's what happens after init finished, it sets it to true, then it can't access it again. But once again, this needs to happen, this needs to have a stale state running system. In other words, for it to be able to set up other users or like take off their account or whatever. It's like there's this whole, not take off an account, it's gonna write that down and I don't want that. Alright, it's only one user at a time on the application. Edit anything regarding the actual there needs to be some sort of way for it to be able to access that. But to be honest, steps 2 through 5 after the app launch are not currently accessible at all because they are locked behind the actual configuration JSON setting key for the local setup process. Wait, you're not gonna add a ticket or like add any information to the other ticket regarding this? It just took the answer. Oh wait, here it is. Ah, perfect. You did reference it. Perfect. If create default config returns an error string _log is called without raising what? Fair value. That's a, I mean, fair point. That's a fair point, but that's a freakish edge case. it wouldn't get emitted until it's done. There's no reason why init finished would ever emit. Let me look at the JSON. Init local true, doc initialization complete. Yeah, there's emit. From anywhere else. I don't know, that's a really freakish edge case. Can you expand on that a little bit before you actually log this? Fair concern. Let's log this and then also make it reference the other ping ticket that we added today in relation to the restructuring of where that ping actually is occurring. Yeah! Call polls until timeout. What is the timeout duration? Well, it wouldn't actually time out. I don't know what the timeout duration is currently, but in all honesty, well, yeah, we need okay, once again, we need robust error handling systems for this. Once again, this is only designed for the happy path currently. Yes. So that's worth noting, but it's not going to take too much time because this is actually the get doc node is actually going through to the proxy API that is connected directly to the head scale server. So that's a whole that's not something that I'm really too concerned with, because the whole purpose of connecting to the proxy API was essentially to make it so the polling time can go down, because essentially what happened was, this was actually, I think this might be left over from beforehand, because I initially was going through tail scale, but the head scale side is so much faster, so I just made the API around that. So it's like, just basically it brings down the overall time that you actually need, because it literally is instantaneous. So this is worth noting, and this is worth having a robust error handling system. I think it potentially still does need a timeout duration, potentially, but like, and then some sort of error handling system. But in all honesty, I think that this API workaround was specifically implemented to fix and bug that I was coming across in relation to the polling time not being enough or being accurate in relation to the refresh of the tail scale. I've been going for 48 minutes so far, not bad. Not bad for a little Sunday sesh. Q14, if doc node IP matches stored IP, the configuration is not updated. Huh? Yes. I remember building this. Wait. I think this was in relation to a system for handling in the case that the network does change the IP. And essentially it's the happy trail, happy path, path for this particular IP address. Doc node IP. Ah, yes. If the doc node IP matches the stored IP. What's stored IP? But wait a minute, stored IP is different. Answer me this question beforehand, because I have a question. Don't log anything yet, but I have a question in relation to that. Stored IP, correct me if I'm wrong, is in relation to the node that's currently being created. Doc node IP is something completely different. It's the actual IP address for the doc on the headscale server. Like the node itself, like the tailscale node for that doc. Ah, yeah, so then basically stored IP is a temporary variable that lives in memory. It's not actually stored in the JSON file. That's why I couldn't find it in the config file. Okay, now, yeah, essentially, yeah, the naming for that should be changed, but in essentially what it's supposed to do is basically check to make sure that the stored IP address doc node IP is accurate. So that's basically what it's doing. I think that's... And then if it doesn't exist, it just updates it with the current one. So it's like it works for either someone who initialized the doc already on the current application instance, or someone who hasn't initialized the doc. That's the purpose of that mechanic right there overall. Yeah. Ah, you're right. Yeah. Yes, I would like to do that. Just to rename that variable, because that is confusing. That naming convention is confusing. 10 more questions for this one. The SSH manager, SSH command variables is called with local true false, but the parameter is never set to true anywhere. When should... This is potentially dead code because I restructured how the SSH variables are handled. This should be within SSH variables and SSH utilities. All of this is set there. So this is potentially dead code. Once again, I need to restructure the entirety of the ping setup and structure and process and all that other stuff. That's just... If I keep that ping step here, that's literally only just as a redundancy, like just a double check, like a safety. But in terms of actual architecture and in terms of it being like load bearing, it's not, I don't think. If SSH succeeds, returns a non-zero. Once again, I think any of the SSH manager... Oh wait, no, here it is. So this right here is the real ping. So I think that... Oh, wait a second. Hold on. Let's go back to question 15 real quick. The SSH manager.sh command variables is called with local on false, but the parameter is never set to true anywhere. Huh. I didn't read that it was calling SSH manager like the class and then this method within that class. Alright, so I have to look into this. I need to honestly really flesh it out, to be honest. The entire SSH process there, it's still a ticket. It's still like something worth mentioning as like SSH ping and then SSH command variables, they're using the SSH manager class, which is correct. That's the updated version. But why is it called with local on false? I don't understand. Why I did that. Oh, now I remember. Why I did that. This is in relation to tailscale ping. So basically, it's trying to do a ping of the local of the tailscale IP. I need robust error handling for this. This is in relation to the tail scale IP testing. It should come back positive. I can't picture why it wouldn't, because it's a freshly set up node, and then you're literally checking on the head scale proxy to make sure that it is actually there. So this is like literally just set up. So yeah, I mean, we do need robust error handling. The entirety of all these steps need like a whole second pass through. Like I said, this entire setup process is like a week worth of error handling systems. And I have the actual gaps to fill in this process, which is why this has so much use. At least the initial gaps. It would get me 90%, like 85% of the way there. And that's a happy medium right there for a non-live product. So did you update ticket 256 with this hole? Because here's the thing. Ha! Alright, dude, we gotta work on that. We have to update the actual fucking context systems for this. We actually need to take a sidebar here. Sidebar here. So we need to add a instruction to the context intent note-taking steps, where basically if something is noting a ticket, it needs to also update the ticket to mention that this is a thing that's also affected by that ticket. In relation to the question, because like at least mentioning it or including some sort of link between the intent and the actual ticket itself, or better yet would be the actual we'll do that later. That I'm mixing too many steps up right now. I need to just do this, and then after that I'm gonna do that, because that's gonna be a whole thing. I'd rather do it as a like clear pass through one time real fast like that, instead of it being let me see, ticket no, intent. So I gotta write that down. Ticket intent, ticket, what else? And then what is it called? What are these called? page. Nice. Concrete gaps to cover. I'm gonna just quickly concrete gaps to cover. I have a thing that I set up in my preview window so I can see a bigger version of me, and next to it you can't see it, but it's in my preview monitor essentially. It's a thing that I set up. Okay. Question 17. The method admits a step ready but never admits a step complete before returning. I believe it does. Can you double check that? I believe it does though. The validate and login step function, yeah, I believe it actually does come from there, but double check it. And I also need to restructure this so the architecture is more consistent across step to step to step, where it's not being triggered by a function, but rather being triggered by the actual step completion within itself, so the function of the step itself. Well, they're being asked what their username should be. So when they set this, they're setting their own username. So odds are they're not gonna use our, like the word our, because it would have an S at the end of it. Like they would have to know the actual naming conventions on the background. But yeah, that technically some jerk could be trying to break it on purpose and could do that. Technically, yeah. They could just name it H-O-U-R-S, I mean H-O-U-R, and then technically that would be true, but then if they named it H-O-U-R-S, then it wouldn't be that. It would be, it's H-O-U-R-S-S doc. So that's, you know, so it's like that's, if they were trying to, they would have to know the exact syntax that I'm using for this. But yeah, technically some jerk could be trying to break it, because there are people that do that for fun. So that is definitely some error robustness that we need to add around that particular safety. Yeah. I so in love with you. Ba, 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 ba. All that I need. All right. If SSH manager universal SSH login succeeds, but later deploy SSH fails, the code continues amid steps complete. Does this mean the setup is incomplete? Yes, it does mean it's incomplete, but Universal's SSH login does have safeties regarding the actual key itself. I think the entirety of SSH login and deploy SSH key should have safeties and more error robustness without a doubt. But so does validate and login, to be honest. So yeah, all of it needs to be more error robust. All right, I'm gonna go bathroom. Be right back. We're back. Took a little break. Oh my god, it's been an hour and a half already? I've been gone for like 10 minutes, right? Damn. Alright, we're gonna go back to this. Alrighty. It doesn't, though. I mean, technically it does. I mean, the Avahi P, the Ahahi P, the Avahi IP, Avahi IP is essentially a representation of the actual IP address, and all the docs are set up with .local by default. That's my infrastructure that we're working through. So it's like that's not something that's going to be changing anytime soon, or is ever going to change, unless they know how to route their stuff. In which case they're being jerks and they're breaking it. So that's on them. Not being jerks. You can break your things. Fuck it. I don't care. Break your shit. Why not? You just have to figure out the other parts. I could open it up like that. So you can do that, but why? Can you give me an example of that kind of a crash, please? This might be a really edge case fucking like error handling system that I need to do. But it might not be worth, let me see. Yes, please, thank you. For both. Log it and then also add the broader concern. I mean, technically, yeah, more error robustness, yeah, that'd be good. I mean, that just falls under the entirety of the I need more SSH error robustness. Oh, that's cool. Robotic arm monitor system. That's fucking awesome. Get the fuck out of here. That's cool. Those robot arm sizes are way overkill for this, for the actual weight of the monitor, but goddamn, they're cool. They are cool. Alright, let's keep going. 22. The hostname fetched via SSH and converted to a Navahi hostname with the appending .local. What if the hostname already exists, ends with .local, ending in the result .local.local? Why is it appending a .local? This is the key value within the JSON configuration file. This might actually answer my question. Oh, yeah. Ah. No, because we actually need to work this, because if the... Yeah. So the host name is always going to use this consistent naming convention because that's how the system works. Like, that's the system I designed. That, like, you actually, if you look in the error in the tickets, you'll see the there's actually a question asking me if this naming convention was branding or if it was for other use. This is literally part of the other uses. So it's like, I mentioned one of the other uses, but this is the other one. This is another one. So it's like, it's just basically keeping consistent naming conventions across the top, from the bottom to the top. So it's like, it's essentially, yeah, no, that's basically what the whole point of that is. How many more questions are left? I don't think there are many left. There should be like 2 more maybe. If run remote payload hostname returns empty, why would it run? Why would it return empty? I mean, yeah, there should be some sort of error handling in the case that it does do that. Let's say if it was not connected to the internet or something. But that's the whole point of having the ping in the first place in the first step, and that's the whole point of SSH utilities and SSH variables to check for that kind of stuff. So I mean, but I guess for some freakish reason, let's say that the power went out and they hadn't, or the internet went out for the dock, and they're somewhere else, not on a local network, and then yeah, I guess that would be very true. So yes, that is something that we need to figure out and have more robust error handling for. But that would absolutely, a stale IP would cause connection failures if it's not valid. I mean, if it wasn't returning something, that's the chicken or the egg scenario right there. If it wasn't returning something, it's because there's an error or some sort of issue with the connection, in which case it's not going to actually update the IP, in which case the IP wouldn't even work at all anyway, because it's not connected to the internet. So the dock is not connected to the internet. So it's like that within itself is an issue, but technically, yeah, there should be some sort of robust error handling there. Robust error handling there. My friend's being abused by her freaking husband, and it's pissing me off. Something fierce. I miss her. I miss my friend. I can't stand the fact that she's being abused. She's such a sweetheart, dude. She's like, we went out for a little bit, but like, she was actually one of the first people I went out with. I dated out in LA. She's such a sweet person, dude. Like, it's we stopped talking just because I think she was like, we had like a situationship kind of a situation, and but we were like legitimate friends though, too, and like. And it's just like, I think she was like falling for somebody else or something happened. Or I said something that pissed her off or something, or she didn't want to date me anymore or something. I have no idea. It kind of like fizzled though. It was like a slow fizzle. And like, we're still friends, obviously, and it just pisses me off that somebody's fucking trying to, like, her fucking husband. Oh my god, dude. I can't stand that shit. I can't stand insecure cisgender straight white men, especially cisgender straight white men. It's just like it's just such a fucking nuisance to see people that are like have these like little fucking like insecurities about themselves and projecting them onto their partners, dude, and like treating them like trash. And she calls like he calls her like the R word, and like, dude, she's like this sweet, like, just super sweet woman, and like, and she has a baby now, and like, god. So that's a problem, because init local flag should be set to true. So yes, there should be error handling in relation to this, like more robust error handling in relation to that, because it shouldn't just continue as if nothing happened if something did fail. But then here's the other thing. So init local stands for the actual local initialization process, right? In the sense of the application, not local in the sense of a local doc setup, in the sense of a local IP address, correct? Because if that's the case, there should be better naming convention for that. I fucked up on that part. I miss those days. Those were good days. They were scary days, but they were good days. When I was hanging out with her, I was going through a lot of shit too.
Some biggies right now. This.
How many more questions are there in this one, dude? What the fuck? Wait a minute. Compacted. There it is. All right, wait a minute. So is this? All right, this is from today, right here. Where's the one where... There you are. No? Those are the ones I already answered. That was from today. Where is it? Huh. Alright. Let's just keep going. I don't know how many more questions I have, but let's just keep going. Alright. Final question for this file! I knew it! Alright. Potentially? Can you look at the code and double check that? And then, if so, let's add a ticket to address this. It just took almost 2 hours for one of these. God damn, dude. Well, I mean, I took a couple of breaks, to be fair. Maybe like 30 minutes of break. Somewhere like that. Alright, now after this, it's gonna actually do the... Run the ingest workflow, please. Thank you. This is gonna take a minute. Alrighty. First question, how many questions are left? $497. Wait, what? Alright, next it is. Hit me with the next questionnaire. Claude, please and thank you. Oh, Lord. Who creates and populates the rsync config objects? Okay, it depends on what rsync config objects means in this instance, because if it's like, let's say, the destination and the source and stuff like that, then it's definitely the UI. But if it's the rsync configuration variables, then it's like the configuration file, which is like the IP address and all the SSH stuff. In which case, we need to put in a ticket for any of the SSH variables to be filled from SSH variables, which is in SSH utilities, instead of it coming from the configuration file directly and actually creating the overall SSH command within rsync backend, and instead making it send through the SSH payload function inside of SSH utilities. Ah! Yes, it defaults to none to be unlimited. Honestly, I had that more as a debugging tool for it to have that. I would like to add a UI control for this, to be honest, to add it to the settings page. That'd be kind of cool. I mean, yeah, sometimes users might want to limit the actual... I mean, honestly, this is in relation more towards trying to address some problems that I was coming across with my network crashing, my local network crashing, but it was actually just due to other things where it was like dynamic IP addresses were like messing with the local switch and all this other stuff. But I think that, I mean, having that option would be cool. I mean, why not? It's already there. But I mean, I don't know anybody who'd want to like limit the upload rate or the download rate or anything like that, bandwidth for the actual processes, but I mean, you never know. It's already there, might as well. But then having that extra control might confuse people. They might set it without knowing what it is. I need to spend some time actually considering that for real, but that's my answer. I would file a ticket actually for question 2, to be honest. Just as a note. Like, with that intention potentially, because if I'm thinking about doing this now, I don't want to forget about it, because I will. So this is before I actually created the SFTP connection and the SFTP functions and all that sort of stuff, and the entire SFTP backend. Like, none of that existed, to be honest. So I think that we need to refactor this and rework it in a way where it does work with the current architecture. That's a ticket, without a doubt. That is because on macOS systems, the actual rsync binary is outdated by a lot. It doesn't use a modern version, it uses a old version of it. I think that might be due to some sort of licensing thing or something along the lines of that, but I worked around it by basically, like, I know it's GPL licensed, so basically I worked around it by just including the binary in my PKG file and then accessing the actual binary through command line instead of actually integrating it as an import or including it in my or compiling it with my binary. So that's essentially the purpose of that, and that's the reason why I did it. It was basically one of the flags. It doesn't exist within the old version that exists on by default on Mac OS systems. Yeah, this is intentional, to be honest. Basically, that's why the pause and the cancel and stop. I mean, the pause and stop buttons exist in the UI in relation to uploads and downloads. Basically, it will keep retrying over and over and over again until you hit pause or stop, or it connects and continues. So that's basically how that works. That's why it's unlimited, because it's just gonna keep trying until you manually stop it. Unless, like, if you don't want it, you have to manually stop it. Otherwise, it's gonna keep trying. I think that's a good, okay open loop like that without there being a max timeout. What do you think, actually? Should I include a max timeout? Because, I mean, what if the user doesn't want it to stop and just wants to stand by until it does connect, or like until the connection is reestablished? That way they don't lose the progress on their upload. And then if they hit the stop button, it automatically does the stop button functions. But to be honest, here's the problem there. If they hit the stop button, how are they sending the stop command to the dock? Where does that live? Because once the program closes, then there could be files that they didn't want to keep, or an incomplete upload. That is worth considering in relation to adding a watchdog prompt that has like a package, a text package that gets sent with the rsync upload intention, the sources and the destinations, and then checking for the destinations to make sure that they are, like in the case of a power failure, if it's not completed it as a complete package, the complete package of the destinations for the uploads, then it deletes those. because it's not a complete package, and then sends out a message back to the doc saying that the upload was not complete. Would you like to start it over? And then basically re-triggering the rsync request. So that's something else that could be added, to be honest, in relation to the watchdog systems that I have there. I'm just gonna keep adding watchdog mechanics to like everything. Wait a second. So I also added another ticket there in questions 5. So there should include the ticket should include the incomplete upload detection and cleanup deferred to the watchdog. Oh yeah, you already did. And 267. I'm just double checking. You added that there, right? Perfect. Okay. Partial is used but not checksum after resume. How is the file integrity verified? Does rsync default size suffice? Yes, it does. Partial just continues it. Checksum isn't that redundant in relation to partial? Doesn't that partial flag cover a lot of that? Where it basically continues it from the recently completely sent hash package. Yeah. Exactly. But they don't. Run upload. Why does the code call SSH add? So right there, that right there needs to be forwarded to the actual SSH key and how it's actually operated. Because, okay, so SSH add is here. This needs to be only added once. And this is actually exactly what needs to be added to the SSH utilities file during the SSH key setup within universal SSH sign in. I believe that's the function. But basically the purpose of that, and then everything SSH here, like I said, needs to be referring back to SSH utilities. This is outdated architecture and it's just like barely working scaffolding. So it's like, honestly, this is something that I need to address. It needs to be restructured anyway. So there's two things I mentioned there, just to clarify. It's getting cooler. I'm gonna turn off the fan. Alright, so run upload. Rsync command filters out non-variant values. What scenarios cause bandwidth limit to be none? Wait a minute, what? I think honestly that was just a redundant safety because there's no way that there would ever be a none value returning for the bandwidth limit unless you manually set that. Like I said, originally I think that entire function was basically a debugging feature that I'd created, but to be honest, I mean it's basically redundant. I don't think there would ever be even when if I added a tool to the UI where you can actually set the bandwidth limit, I don't think that it would actually ever have a way to be set to none, like in the UI side. You would need to manually set that within the actual compiled binary, like directly, like in some way you would need to be able to create an interface that would be able to actually send that into the binary, and that's not a thing. Yeah, partial basically automatically detects the incomplete files and continues the actual sync. That's literally how it works. But to be honest, what it ends up doing is if it finds if there's a partial file, and then after that what it does is it restarts it, where like it basically continues from that partial file. I believe that is the actual way that it is supposed to function, and that's how it does function from when I was debugging this the first time around back in fucking like months ago. So let's give look that up though, but I believe I'm right.
Starting in December, all men between the ages
I fucking love these.
Which means the past tense of freeze would be
freezed.
no.
What do you think?
What would you think? It would be froze. You don't see how? It's because
You don't see how?
and if the past tense of match is matched, then the past tense of catch would be
Catched?
no.
What was
It would be caught. You don't see how? It's
You don't
because
see
it's
how?
not catched. That's why. And if the past tense of make is made, then the past tense of take would be
Tade?
no. What would you think? It would be.
What would you think?
You know, so let's take a step back. So if read is the present tense, then the past tense of read would be
Reeded?
no. What would you think?
Raid or road?
No. What would you think?
Something other than R-E-A-D?
No. What would you think? The past tense of read would be read. You don't see how? It's
You don't see how?
because
I hate this class.
so the past tense of sneeze would be
Sneezed.
which means
I fucking love these. They're my favorite. You don't see how? You don't see how? No. What do you think? Oh, my neighbors are playing some spicy music. I'm really excited about that. They're all having fun. Okay. All right, let's see. The SSH connection uses server alive interval equals 15 and server alive count max 240. What is the total timeout window for detecting a hung connection, and why are those specific values? Those were default values that I had created. Honestly, once again, the SSH connection... Oh shit, no, this actually is SSH specific to this. It did work. I can't remember what the total timeout was for detecting a hung connection, but I believe it was like 30 seconds or some shit like that. It wasn't too long. And then, or 60 seconds max. I mean, maybe. I can't remember. This is months and months and months ago. So, but either way, I think the SSH connection live, like, I think this is something that might be reused in other locations, and I think this is something worth creating within SSH utilities and SSH manager, the class inside of there, inside of SSH utilities. So I think this is something worth putting into a ticket as well, but that's my answer in relation to the actual intention behind that originally. I can't remember, and it's default variables that I had created. All I know is that when I tested it, it did work though. In the sense that it detected the hung up connection and then ran the ping systems and all that sort of stuff. But all of those systems need to exist within SSH utilities, to be honest, because that is an SSH utility for any SSH actions or anything like that. It's worth it having a single source of truth for that kind of function, to be honest. No, it did not take. Run upload. Question 11. When configuration.download equals true and config, alright, the code appends the source paths directly from a list. What validation ensures the source list is populated and contains valid? That is the actual UI overall. So that's basically what is feeding those variables for both instances, both upload and download. It's just that the actual true false for download is set by the actual UI as well, actually. So in both instances, the UI is feeding both the source and destination as well as the true and false for the config.download. Why does the code call subprocess.run only on uploads and not downloads? And what does this sync command accomplish? That's weird, but once again, this run upload should be running through the SSH run SSH payload in SSH utilities. So, I mean, overall, that's kind of fucking weird that it's running for one and not the other one. I think that it might be branched off and it might be restated in download as well. So it's like it runs for upload and then it runs for download. So it's like those are two separate functions, but you're right, that should be refactored better in a better way. Yeah, without a doubt. Hi, cutie patootie. Hi. Hello, darling. No. Wait, let's go back to question 12. I don't think that's correct. When I say upload only asymmetry being correct, I didn't say that. I said the opposite of that. I said it's like it's two separate functions, but it should be refactored in a better way, without a doubt. Which means that is, while it's correct in the initial attempt, it was not done correctly. It should be done correctly instead by making a single source of truth for the upload and download commands by running it through to SSH utilities. So basically both of those commands need to run through a single SSH command function that is created. That already exists. That can be set through variables or parameters, like the current payload function. Oh, wait. Wait. I fucked up. Nope. Question 12 again. You're correct. Upload is an SSH function. Download is not. It is a local command. Holy shit. I'm so sorry. I fucked up there. That's why it was done like that. It was intentional. And then also please for question 12, make sure that the intent summary reflects that the asymmetries. Oh yeah, okay, cool. You already did that. All right, thank you. I'm sorry. I feel so bad. Okay, let's see here. All right, let's see. All right, question 13. The ping loop runs indefinitely until the host is reachable. If a host never recovers, what stops this loop? So basically that's the pause and the stop button in the UI. That is done on purpose. But once again, we also refer to that one ticket where we're talking about the new error handling system for those that includes the watchdog. So the upload and download, well, for the upload. For the watchdog. And honestly, a download one could also be needed as well, because what if it stops, and then because the source in the download, let's say in the download side, the source would be the dock, and let's say the connection's cut, we need to be able to, well, I guess that's what the UI is for. But what if you close the account? What if you close the application? Then you lose the memory state. There should potentially be a configuration option for that as well, potentially. I think so. But it wouldn't be the watchdog for downloads, though. It could be in law. It could be in the watchdog, because then once it gets stated again, then it'd be like, where is it coming from, all that sort of stuff. In addition to the last ticket there, 267, I think that it could either live locally for the downloads or live within the watchdog. But either way, for the watchdog, when you send the actual upload request, well, the upload job, so that way it could track and keep memory of it before it loses connection, I think that it should... part of the package that it receives, it should be a IP address of the, or some sort of identifier for the node that it's receiving it from, even if it's a local upload. Then that way it has some sort of way to identify the actual device that is actually uploading the files. That also comes back to the other ticket that we had filled out today, where it was in reference to why have a unique identifier, like some randomly generated number, pop up in relation to the node that is created within the Tailscale server. The head scale server user, where basically the user, when they create the node for their local machine, that it has some sort of random generated 4-character alphanumeric appendage, extension, whatever the fuck, that actually serves as a purpose for that as well. Not just in the sense of something that can live, not just in the sense of tail scale and head scale and having a unique identifier there, but actually uniquely identifying each machine. The user does need to enter a... Then you know what? Then I think this is a whole other ticket, but I think in the local setup process, a configuration JSON configuration key that should be added is the actual node name for the host name for the actual machine. That way it can send that as part of the package that it sends to the dock in relation to the rsync job that it's currently running, that's about to run, basically, for memory's sake. I got a fucking bug bite right there, and my goddamn, it's a thick one. Ugh. Nice. Good job. Good job. Good job. when a called processor is caught, the code increments retry count, but the ping loop can still run forever. How do max retries and the infinite ping loop interact with to prevent deadlock? So once again, I need more context. I need more context in relation to this edge case error here, but from what I explained beforehand, just to give you more context in relation to what you're about to tell me, because you might be able to deduce what, based on what you see in the code and based on my answer here, to draw the best conclusion in relation to that potentially. But the max retries, the purpose of that, and the infinite ping loop, the purpose of that is essentially that it's supposed to keep going forever until the user either hits pause or hits stop, pause and then stop. So I think, oh, it increments the retry count, but the ping loop can still run forever. Honestly, I think there was a limit originally, and that's old scaffolding, to be honest. That might be dead code in relation to, I mean, but I think it also might be UI in relation to, like, so then that way the user can actually receive that variable, so they could see within the actual console for the download stuff, for the upload stuff, sorry. Can actually receive that variable so they can see within the actual console for the upload stuff, to have context in relation to how many actual retries there have been, in case the user goes away from the machine and comes back to it to check up on it and sees, oh wait, there hasn't been that many, I might as well stop this and try it later, or I don't care, just keep it going. You know, that way the user can have some sort of UI in feedback. So it would just keep going forever. Woof. Woof. That's a bug. Alright, so intent, question, master charge. Okay. Alright, so the PID callback is invoked once. What does the UI use this PID for, and how does the UI signal the process to stop, given that config stop requested is checked only between loops, between retry loops? Huh. Honest to God, I cannot remember, and I also need more context for this. We're about 10 questions out. My parents are about to stop by with pizza and I can't wait. Oh, fuck yeah. Alright, run upload additional Q16. Why does code check config.stop requested at the start of the retry loop but also after the process exits? Are there race conditions if the user stops mid ping loop? I honestly have not tested this mid ping loop. This is worth looking into. Also, look into the context of this in relation to the actual code base, please. This retry system I designed myself actually forever ago and I just can't remember. There's just thousands of lines of code, dude. It's just so much. Yeah, the genuine gap is inside of the ping loop. I designed that myself forever ago. I actually remember that shit. Wait, what? Because the folder hasn't been made yet. So essentially it's like a placeholder, but it's basically updating the actual destination by appending the source folder name. Wait, that's the source, not the destination. Oh, because that's the actual current name of the folder. So essentially the folder hasn't been created yet. But the folder that's going to be created is named the same exact thing because you're copying the folder, not copying the actual... That might be a fucking sloppy way to do that. That is worth readdressing, to be honest. But that was, I think, the intention. I was half asleep when I did that one. I remember that was a 24-hour day, actually, in terms of creating the actual code for that part. I think that was part of a 24-hour day, and I was just like fucking tired. But I think that was the intention, to be honest. Question, are you filing the intent summaries that you're describing here inside of the actual intent folder, by the way, and the intent file? Because there's a couple of times where I've seen this intent summary, but I don't see it actually being updated within the actual intent file or the question and answer or the questionnaire, how you've been doing it beforehand. So I'm just curious if that's still happening, or are you storing this in local memory until you actually need to add these? What? No way! Dude, no. The directions specifically should say that you are... Oh my goodness. Let's continue for now, but we need to fucking fix that, because in the other steps, the other workflows that we were working through, you were actually updating the questionnaire with my responses. So this is concerning. Because what if you compress the conversation? Then you lose all my responses. That's so dangerous. The questionnaire should be getting updated consistently, and then all the tickets that are being filed should actually get filed as we go along, question by question. That is a thing that should be happening. That's how we've been working beforehand, and this is the first time I'm seeing this right now, where it's like it's just storing it in the conversation. It's like, what happens if the conversation gets compressed and you lose all of the context? Or hallucinated, even worse. No. I did not request for you to make it into a memory. We need to add it into the workflow. So anytime during the questionnaire that there's a ticket that pops up, and I answer a question, an intent question, it should actually be updating the tickets, and it should actually be updating the actual answer to the intent question. That way it doesn't rely on it being in local memory. That is so dangerous. Holy shit, dude. That is so dangerous. No. I did not say to flush it to the intent file. I said to just add it to the questionnaire. How it has a question and answer, it should just be adding a question and answer. It should just be adding it in the questionnaire itself. It should not be flushing the intent to the intent file right now, because you don't have the full concept. You don't have the full spec, the full view of everything. How can you possibly create an intent file if you don't have the full answer to how everything works? Yes. God damn, dude, that is so scary. Oh my god, dude. All that work would have been fucking lost. And it's like, and then on top of that, it's like it has the context window, and then it's adding it later, and then it's basing it off of fucking whatever the. That is so bad. That is not good orchestration for context windows, dude. What the fuck? It was doing it like that beforehand. I don't understand why it stopped. And then same thing for the tickets. The tickets should be getting updated as it goes along. And the way that the current questions work for the questionnaire, it should be working the same exact way for the tickets. Exactly, I see it there. I see it in the responses. Holy shit, dude. What? That's crazy. I can't believe I had it that other way. Oh my lord. That was my fault. I should have designed around that, but that's the whole purpose of this whole thing is basically we gotta fucking make sure this shit gets done correctly. Wow, dude. That was scary. That was legitimately scary. Woof. You see how long it's taking just for this? Can you imagine trying to do the intent, the question and answer fill out, then make an intent, then dude, no way. No way. All right. And did it do the same for all the tickets, by the way? Just that's another sidebar here. Because holy shit, dude, that was scary. I've seen that you've been filling out the tickets, but we just double check to make sure, please and thank you? All right. Ooh, that was scary. Alright, once again, this should not be living as an SSH command. This should be SFTP, and it should be going through the current SFTP backend and should basically be sending it through that and not SSH. So that's something that needs to be restructured. No, no, no. So in relation to this, the permissions should be set already within the SFTP backend. That's what I'm trying to get at. It should be using the SFTP backend. So the permissions, I don't remember having to set any sort of permissions. I think SFTP backend works within the user permissions in relation to the folder creation, right? Or am I wrong there? And this is in reference to question 18. The group is already set. I mean, the group is basically what's populating the SFTP backend. I mean, the SFTP browser. SFTP browser, I believe the permissions should be tied to that. Can we double check that, please? Or the SFTP connection and settings, or whatever the fuck it's called. Oh, my pop's calling me. My parents are bringing a pizza over. They're almost home. All right, when creating a local directory. All right, so basically, I think the permissions are automatically set, aren't they? By the OS and the user that's setting and creating the directory. I think make dirs does set that already. I don't think it actually needs to set the permissions because the permissions are set by the user that's actually creating it. I think that falls under the OS library. I think it should automatically be setting the permissions based off what the user's permissions are. Ha! Nice. Why does the code only execute prepare destination once at start and not again if the transfer fails and retries? Could the destination folder change between retries? No, it couldn't, because that's the whole purpose of setting the variables. It's not going to re-ask you if you want to set the variables again. It just continues the download or the upload if it's doing that. Why would it need to reset or restate the destination? That makes no sense. That's the whole purpose of having the variables set at the beginning, because then it's still operating within the same set of source and destinations. It's the same job. Can you double check with the code just to make sure that I am answering that correctly, because it's been a while since I last worked on that. Nice. All right, Q20 answered. Moving to the rsync config additional section. The source is treated as a folder or list of files. But the code never validates. Copy folder is the flag controls whether the source is treated as a folder or a list of files. But the code never validates that the source actually matches this flag. What prevents type errors? Wait, what? It should. It already does. The actual copy folders function comes after validating if it's folders or not. It already is checked for folders. What are you talking about? Can you double check that with the code base? But I believe I'm correct there. You don't see why? Why would you think? Why would you think that? What would you think? You don't see why? Back to question 21. Should there be a ticket for that? Yeah, worth it. Quick question, is ticket 274 actually filed, or are you just stating that and you're storing it within the actual context window of the conversation like you were with the other answers? I'm just curious about that. Because I checked and you said that you have been. Okay. So all the tickets that you say you've been filing, you've actually been filing. They don't live within the conversation context window, right? Right? Okay. It's always 5 just because that's the default that I set. I don't know why you would want to set any other ones. That's like long enough that it's like a good time to fix something potentially in between each ping, and then that's also short enough that you're not waiting forever between each ping. I think that's a good number. To be honest, it's always 5. I don't know why somebody would want to customize that like that. That's just like such ridiculous levels of fine tuning. Makes no sense. The download flag inverts the rsync source destination rules, yes, but there's no corresponding upload flag. Why is download the only directional toggle? Honestly, this is due to the upload being the first thing that I created, and then originally I was going to make a separate download function, but then I realized that I could just make the first function modular by adding that download flag. So that's the reason why I did that, to be honest. Because it's like it's already upload function, and it's like you might as well just have like a little flag for the download. I don't know, I feel like that yeah, it could be cleaner, to be honest. Why not make a ticket and basically clean up the structure of that function? But if I do that, I need to clean up a lot of other things that surround that function. That's the thing, like all the places that actually call that function. So it's a little bit, it sounds like a small fix, but it actually has larger implications. Not huge implications, because it's like just literally tied to the UI at that point, but still. The rsync command uses... What does blocking-io do in this context? Why is it necessary? I do not remember. I do remember adding that. But I cannot remember what it does or why I use it. I remember there was a reason for this, though. I do remember that part. I do remember that particular flag. When output callback is provided, lines from rsync are sent to the callback. How does the UI consume this output? And can the callback block or slow down the rsync process? I think they're sent via print messages, to be honest. I think they're sent via prints. Double check that, though. Oh yeah, STD out. Yeah, that's... Yeah, but it's sent via prints, but it goes to STD out. That's, yeah, the console. Yeah. All right. Whatever. Run upload flags and callback. So The code catches a keyboard interrupt only inside the Arctic. What happens if during the ping loop? To be honest, I don't think it should be catching keyboard interrupt. I think the only way that it should be actually canceling the actual upload or the download or whatever is through the pause and stop. That being said, is run upload the only way to send the rsync command? Because that should potentially be updated in terms of the naming not syntax, convention. Papa's calling me. Hey, papá. Ah, ya te veo un segundito. Es que tengo que terminar estas preguntas. Estoy en las últimas como 2 por ahí. Alright, hablamos muy pronto. Alright, why does the code treat all exceptions except keyboard? Are there errors when retrying? Makes no sense. I can't think of any errors where retrying makes no sense. And once again, can you look into the code context for that? Just I cannot remember the answer to that one. I'm trying to get past these questions. I want to eat pizza. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten. And I've been going for almost 3.5 hours, so maybe I got it. It's about food time. Alright, retrying makes sense for yep. Alright, cool. Filling a ticket, filing a ticket. Why does filing have only one L and filling have 2 L's? I feel like filing should have 2 L's. And filling should... Oh, that makes sense. I guess it's just literally differentiation. Yeah, that's it! Please proceed with the end-to-end ingest for steps 3 to 10. I appreciate you. Hello? 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 All right, it's doing it. The music just finished. This is a good stopping point, I think. I will be back tomorrow, actually, I think. I finished 2 files today. That was like 50 questions. Not bad. That's like 1/8 of everything I need to finish. All right, I'm gonna go. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you. I might be back later, maybe not. It's 6:30. I'm trying to go to sleep early. I might play a video game before bed, but also might not. I just kind of want to go to bed. All right.